guys, so if you follow me over on Facebook and Instagram, you'll have seen that I built a B-Box a while ago. And then if you follow me here on the YouTubes, you'll have seen that I built a Pirate's Treasure Chest. Now both of those were for the same client, and the client has returned for a third time for another build. Now what I am building in this video is I'm going to refer to it as two different things because throughout its lifespan it's going to go from one to the other. So first of all, we are building a longbow case. That is what the client is going to have it for first, and then as time progresses the idea is for it to go to a rifle case. So I'm going to probably refer to it as both as we go on. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's get dusty. First things that I need to do is I need to glue up the top and the bottom. Because of the fact that the thing is going to be a little bit wider than the boards that I have, I need to join some boards together. That's the first step that we gotta do. Now I could do one giant glue up, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it to just over length size that I need, and then I'm going to glue it, and therefore I can cut everything flush and straight after it is dried. When doing a glue up something like this, think about your top and your bottom of your boards. So this side has this big old knot and has this knot in the side of it. So this, I'm going to make this the inside. This top looks a lot nicer. This is going to be the actual top of the case itself. So then I also have to think about with the other board that I'm gluing up, what is going to be the top and the bottom. Now this one seems a little bit more rough. I can still fill some stuff, but this one, we're going to have this not be the top because I don't really have very many other options with the wood that I'm using. We're just going to glue it and use about 4,000 clamps. I found out with woodworking is you can never have too many clamps, you can never add too many clamps. So I'm going to lay the glue, smear it with my finger to get it nice and evenly distributed, and then clamp it all in, and I'm going to let it dry overnight. So while that glue dries up, what we're going to do next is we're going to actually cut and rip the boards for the outer side of the box. And since the box is going to be basically two boxes that will rawr together like one box, like this, rawr, to add that depth in there for the case. So I'm taking my overall width, splitting it in half, and leaving those two pieces. Then I can assemble those boxes out of what I'm cutting right meow. So now to keep this thing together, I'm just going to glue the ends and then brad nail them in. Should be plenty strong enough, especially when we do the actual top inserts. So, by the way, this can't go like this. Silly me, I need one of each side. Silly me. Now, in an effort to keep these things square, I put these squares in and clamped them in there. I don't have any square clamps, so that should hopefully work. And then before this actually dries, I'll get the other one on there and I'll make sure everything lines up together. Alright, these things are now dry, so let's get these things out of clamps and bring them back over the table saw. Let's actually rip them down to their finished width and then cut them on the chop saw down to their finished length. So now everything is cut and ready to be fit. So now we can take the tops that we just ripped down and glued up yesterday and we can put them into our frames. Now, I was going to put this through the planer to get it all nice, to get the joint nice and good, but the joint feels really well. I think sanding it will be just good enough. And I don't really feel like getting the planer out because that's kind of a lot of work because I have a small shop and crap's stored everywhere. So we're going to basically glue around the entire perimeter of this was actually the bottom, and then we're just going to finish nail all the way around, clamp it, and let that dry. And then we'll obviously read it to the bottom, so that means the top has to have literally the same thing. So now I have everything, outer clamps, everything's all dried up. So basically we have made 2 ginormous serving trays. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom and then we're going to take the top and we're going to do this. Just like that. And what that's going to do is obviously then when the case will open when I get some hinges on it. Couple issues with this, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to fix them because I'm not perfect. Spoiler alert. So one thing is this thing doesn't line up exactly the way I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out exactly how I want it to sit, what's going to be the front, what's going to be the back, the top, all that. Once I have it, know exactly what I want, I'm going to clamp this thing together and I'm going to sand all the sides together. Therefore, they will, once I get them all sanded, they're all going to match completely perfect. The other thing is and if you're not perfect, right, like me, what happens is I get these little gaps down. Let me see if I can reach it down here. When you're doing an inlay type thing like this, you get these gaps right in here because I'm not perfect and my machines and tools aren't perfect and I don't know what I'm doing 90% of the time. What I used to do with these is and I've had them long enough that I can say what I used to do with these. What I used to do with these is I used to fill them with putty. The thing with that is putty doesn't always accept your stain the same color as your thing, and normally you can see it. Now you can take some of I would take some of the sawdust from the table saw, mix it with glue, put it in here, and that would also work. But what I've been doing lately is I've been using some 5-minute epoxy and some pigment, and I've just been putting that in there and then sanding over that smooth, which is what I'm going to do now. Is I'm going to fill all of these little imperfections like that with 5-minute epoxy and pigment. And before we start sanding this thing down, we do need to fill all those little nail holes. I've gotten everything else filled with the epoxy, all the bigger stuff. The nail holes, though, I am going to use a little bit of putty. So it is time for the putty party. Putty these up, wait for it to get all dried, and then we are going to sand this thing down so we can start working on some custom routering. So we are ready to move on to the custom routering portion of this thing. Now what I gotta do is I gotta draw out everything that I want to do. If you're curious on how I do this, I made a tutorial video about how I actually do all of my custom routering. Right now I'm gonna draw out everything I want, and then I actually have to stop filming because I have to then send it to the client and then get their approval on that. But I'm gonna set everything up and draw everything out because I'm pretty confident that we're gonna be a go. What I just did there is I made the actual kind of the design that's going to be to kind of case around the bottom and top of this. I won't be routering up these, but this whole arch design and everything like that, that's what I'm going to be using here. Sorry about the fan noise, but it's 89 degrees in the shop. I need this to be able to function. The first thing I got to do now is I want to find the center because I'm going to base everything off of that where my main spot's going to sit. Stop it, you're being silly. 29 inches to the center. Right there. 29 inches to the center. Cut all my shapes off on my Cricut. If you haven't, like I said, again, if you haven't seen the video, check out the video on how I do this. client has officially signed off on the design, so now it's time to start routering. But first, let me give a shout out to one of my 13-year-old subscribers who made this for me. How awesome is that? I'm going to hang it up somewhere around here so you guys can always see it, and I can always remember how awesome you guys are. With that being said, though, I'm going to get to routering this thing out. So in order to get these lines as straight as possible, I'm going to use this little slidey guard thing. Just going to put it where I want it and then tighten up the screws that are on it, and that'll allow me to drag this thing along the edge and should keep me pretty straight where it needs to be straight. And then after that, I'll go through and I got a hand router for the rest of this thing. The router out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to round over the top and the bottom of this on the outside edge. Now I'm doing that because of the fact that with this thing being the case that it is, it may get thrown in the back of a truck and dragged around, and whenever you're doing something that could get dragged on the ground, if you give it a round over corner, it's less likely to have something snag it and splinter off or anything like that. So just quick round over on the top and the bottom, and then we got to fill the routering with some paint. I'm going to go through and quickly hit all the inside of the routering with the Dremel to flatten everything out and get all of the big boogers off and stuff like that before I get this thing painted up. With the amount of detail that I have in this and all of the little grooves that I have, I was hemming and hawing over which way I wanted to add the black. If you watch my how to router a sign video, you'll see I've talked about a couple different options that I have, and I think for this one it just makes more sense to just hand paint it all in. It's going to take quite a while, but I think the time that I spend here painting it, I will save on having to sand, because this pine will absorb absolutely all the paint, and it'll take me forever to get it out and make it look crisp and clean. So it's going to take me a while, but I think it's going to be worth it to go this route. And I can't spread legs anymore. Oh. So that took a little bit longer than what I wanted to with the brush, but I think it's gonna be really worth it. So now all I gotta go through and sand this thing down, and that's gonna crisp up all of these lines, take away all those extra brush strokes that I made. I'm going to show you it real quick because I've already showed you guys me sanding, and the only thing more boring than sanding is watching somebody sand. And for a clear coat, we're gonna use this Hellmann's spar urethane. Actually, this is what I used on my boat case that I made like 6 or 7 years ago, and it's held up really, really well. So I'll probably do 3 or 4 coats of that on this right here, and then we will just throw some hardware together. think everyone would agree this looks like a case. And you open up. So you can't disagree with me, that looks like a case, but it does look a little empty. I think we need to put something in there. That's where this comes in. And you're asking yourself, what is this? And it is supposedly foam. It was in a box, and then I took it out of the box and showed you guys it in a package, and then I just took it out of its secondary package, and now I gotta take it out of its third-dairy package. These things are packaged in there pretty tight. Look at this. They just expand in front of your eyeballs. I think I'm going to pull these apart and give them a second to fluff themselves out. And that is it for this case build. Let's talk a little bit about it though. So here I have two latches. Both of these clip latches have spaces for padlocks because honestly, things that you put in here you probably want to lock up for some safety reasons. And you give her a little open and you have the foam inserts for the top and the bottom. Now I did put some carpet tape on the top inserts to help hold the top from falling down. I didn't do any on the bottom, and a couple reasons why I didn't on the bottom. I want you to be able to remove the foam. On my case, my bow case, I have the user's manual, I don't know what you call it. I have that underneath the foam. I have an extra release under the foam. It's just a nice little place that you can store some flat things, some hunting licenses, stuff like that, so it's not floating absolutely all around inside the case. But it has got the foam on it, and I think it's going to be really protective for whatever he puts in. Latching it back up. Now I did do a handle on the front for ease of carrying. 4 coats of polyurethane, protectant polyurethane on this. Now all the custom routering that I did on this, from the buck head to the little peanuts and the number 2 and the N, all that is representative of his family and his nicknames that his family has for him. So that's where all this is from. But with that being said, this does wrap up this project. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in the next build.